welcome back to Peak, Train Like a Girl, the pod for girls and coaches. Caitlin and I are excited to chat with our next guest, sports performance coach, Maddie. I've actually been trying to get Maddie on the podcast for probably about a year. But before we do that, Caitlin, can you fill us in on what's going on in the world of Peak?
Yes, hello and welcome back, everyone. There are so many exciting things developing with Peak, especially our Peak app, which Samson and I have been so excited to be working on. And we've been working so hard to create workouts, meditations, classes, and even more resources to provide female athletes with science-backed information to have them feeling healthier and higher performing all of the time. We will soon be launching a special week recovery program, which will be available for anyone to try the program out for free on the app. So we will be launching that shortly, and we're so excited to continue to watch our Peak community develop. Another exciting thing is that tomorrow is International Day of the Girl, which is so exciting to make sure we celebrate the women around us and join us on our Peak platforms to celebrate all female athletes. And speaking of female athletes, we are so thrilled to have Maddie on the pod today. So I will hand it over to get her introduced.
All right, Maddie, are you ready to get warmed up with us?
Let's do it.
All right, brand new question. Lipstick or lip balm?
Oh, lip balm.
All right. Do you have a specific brand?
I don't know if this qualifies as a balm, but I love the Summer Fridays lip butter balm. I guess it is a balm. Love that. I'm obsessed with it right now.
Oh my gosh, I don't even know what that is. Fill us in.
Oh, you'll have to try it out. It's so good.
I'm a
What's
big
it called?
fan.
The brand is Summer Fridays, and they have, I think, like 5 different, I guess they're flavors. Sense? I don't know.
So I'm the only one not in the know.
We'll get you some, Samson.
Okay. All right, Maddie, curious about this. Pool or beach?
Actually, beach. And I know that could be surprising from a swimmer, but
That
definitely
did.
beach.
That surprised me just a little. All right. Blow dry or air dry your hair?
Blow dry.
Taylor Swift or the Beatles?
I'm gonna go Taylor Swift, new album out, so pretty high on
What are
Taylor
your
Swift
thoughts?
right now. I'm a little disappointed, but it is what it is.
Yeah, full transparency. It's so funny because we've been asking this question. I've been asking this question at work. When you work with high school girls, there's a lot of conversations about Taylor Swift, and everyone has kind of said the same thing. They're a little disappointed, and it's always followed by and she is remarkable, so talented, go girl. Like she does all of the things and she crushes everything, right?
Oh yeah. Incredible businesswoman, great music, but yeah, a lot of my high school athletes that I've trained have been not too happy with, I think, her last 2 albums, actually. So
I know, isn't that funny? I know. Maybe she needs to listen to us telling Taylor Swift. Taylor, we totally know that you haven't crushed. We are not music critics, and obviously you're the businesswoman of the year. But they've kind of said the same thing to me. They haven't enjoyed the music quite as much as the previous albums. Yeah. All right, one last question before we get started. 4-star hotel or camping?
4-star hotel for sure. I have a phobia of camping.
All right, there was no hesitation there.
Yeah, definitely not.
All right, Maddie, fill us in. What is your story to being a girl in sport?
Yeah, so I feel like as long as I could walk, even before I could walk, I've just loved sports. I think my parents threw me in a pool when I was 2, 1.5, something like that. And I just automatically loved being active. I think my first time dreaming of being an Olympic athlete was kindergarten, and I wanted to be a figure skater. And then it eventually morphed into, making its way through 5 different sports. And then I fell into swimming, loved it, swam in college. And then after college, I loved it so much that I wanted to become a sports performance coach and help other athletes reach their goals. So I am a huge advocate for sports, especially girls in sports. I think it teaches so many life lessons and just helps you develop a base of confidence that's so important for the rest of your life.
Yeah, I think so too. Caitlin, what do you have?
Yeah, I mean, it's so crazy to hear you say that you fell in love with it in kindergarten and knew that so early you wanted to go on to continue that. What do you think has been the biggest development with your attitude towards your sports throughout your entire career?
Yeah, I I was always a pretty hard worker, but I really struggled in the weight room, actually. I grew up and I really I didn't understand it. I didn't understand why it applied to my sport, and no one really explained it to me. I didn't really have a great female role model in terms of coaches. Actually, until college really is the first time I had a female coach that I, learned about it a little bit more and delved into it and understood why lifting is important to sports performance. And so I really struggled with that throughout high school and even throughout college for a little bit. And I just kind of slacked off in the weight room and, like getting a little better now. But back in the day, there's a stigma around women lifting, and that really got to me and leads into different parts of your sport about like nutrition and fueling, and different parts of that stigma bleeded into my training and my athletic performance. And so I really did a 180. Really, I guess towards the end of college is when I really tried to understand and educate myself better about, the whys behind my training. So that's been my biggest development. And it's so funny that now I'm a sports performance coach and I work with girls in the gym almost every day lifting. And I really try to make that a part of my coaching philosophy, is that educating those female athletes on why we're doing this, why we're doing every single exercise that I give them, and why it's important, as opposed to just throwing something at them and then expecting them to understand and just complete everything with full intent.
Yeah. This is why I wanted you on the podcast and why I feel like I've been a little stalking you since we met on this crazy platform because we met through social media, which is hilarious.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like we know each other, but we really don't.
I know. Yeah.
I know, right? So here's the thing and this is why I wanted you on, is that I am a certified personal trainer. So I'm a strength and conditioning coach, among other certifications, because you and I both know that in this profession, it's not very regulated. So you basically go through and acquire a bunch of certifications. Mm-hmm. So something that is frustrating for me, and I'm curious about your thoughts, and I love that you talked about, I didn't have any female role models. So basically I wasn't really connected to the weight room when I was in high school because no one really told me the why. There's obviously this push for getting girls in the weight room, but I'm not even really sure the push is addressing the why. I think the push is trying to address the conversation over access and equity and equality. And the problem is that taking a girl and shoving them in a weight room doesn't really address any of those issues. You're basically giving them a space to either do nothing or get hurt. That's my opinion. So you're giving them workouts that are meant for a male. A lot of times they're meant for a male football player. So sometimes they're not even applicable for a male swimmer because it's not nuanced enough. And it is science, exercise science and strength science. It is a science. And one thing that we know is that the weight room isn't beneficial unless you're doing exercises that are beneficial for your sport or for your gender. So specifically, posterior training for women because they tend to be more quad dominant, or understanding the difference in, the Q angle or the higher incidence of ACL tears, et cetera, et cetera. So I guess my question to you is, if all we're doing is addressing at a young age the idea of access and we're not addressing these other things, are we really moving the needle? Are we doing more harm than good? What are some of your thoughts?
Yeah, you know what? I definitely don't feel like we're doing more harm than good in that sense. I think it's a huge milestone just to get anyone in the weight room, regardless of gender. I think there are so many benefits to strength training, to plyometrics, to speed work throughout your life, athlete or not. There's clear research on that. So I really am a huge advocate of just anyone coming in. But the problem, I think, in the sports science world right now, and has been this way forever really, is that the sports science is all male-based.
Sure.
There's very little research on female athletes. And that's something that's really frustrated me throughout my career so far, is I can look at any textbook and any research journal, and my mind obviously just goes right to, okay, well, what are the subjects here? And you look at it and it's like 93% male. this applies to.
And by the way,
athletes.
white 23-year-old men.
Yeah, exactly.
Sorry.
No, it's
Yeah,
okay.
sorry.
Yeah, it's just that's where you look everywhere. It's all over. And so it's frustrating to me to have been an athlete and realize that all my strength coaches have had, the same education that I did, that is all male dominant, male based. And my needs as a female athlete, which are a little different than the needs of a male athlete, were never taught, addressed, anything. I am really fortunate enough to work in an environment where we have world-class physical therapists in-house, and we actually primarily treat ACL injuries. And as we know, that's typically a female athlete injury. There's more of a prevalence of it in female athletes, I should say. And so the gym that I work at is really focused on injury prevention for female athletes specifically. I think about 60%, maybe even 70% of our clientele are female athletes.
Love
and
that.
So we do pay more attention to those specific barometers of, let's make sure you stay injury free in these specific areas where you're more at risk for those. But I do strongly agree that the sports science needs to be addressed on the female athlete side. That's a big, big problem.
Yeah, I agree. And one of the things that we're specifically doing, or I'm doing with my female athletes, and I wonder if it's the same for you, is I'm not a power lifter. I don't do powerlifting. So we do strength work, and then I do a lot with mobility and functional movement. I'm not really sure. Like, I think flexibility sometimes gets thrown around and people don't really understand what that is. And in my line of work, there's very few athletes that actually need to be flexible. I work primarily with runners and soccer players. I actually do have a pretty large handful of swimmers. So we're really focused more on mobility, unilateral stabilization, and then more sports specific strength training. Is that also what you're seeing? And tell me how you're adapting through both in season when you're training athletes and off season. What does that look like?
Yeah. So I think there's a bunch of different parts to training, obviously, but at least on the flexibility side, I want to mention that really quickly. When you're strength training, and you can look up the research on this, I can't remember the specific numbers, but you are actually getting more flexible.
Exactly.
There's studies that show that as you strength train, as you lift some weights, your flexibility increases without necessarily doing stretching or anything. Yeah. So I think, I wouldn't say we completely cover that block. I do still think that athletes should be recovering and stretching on their own. That's not something that I typically prescribe a whole lot. Yeah. Mainly because I have an hour with that athlete for maybe 4 times a week if I'm lucky, but a lot of the times, especially in season, once or twice a week. Yeah. So if I'm getting 2 hours a week with them, 1 hour a week with them, that's the first thing to go. I'm going to focus on, their meat and potatoes, things that really are going to impact them in season. And then we'll cover everything else later. In terms of like in season, out of season, yeah, athletes now are so busy. Their schedules now are crazy. And I think that's they're so much busier than they were 5 years ago, even. I don't know if you're seeing the same thing.
Yeah.
But I really struggle to get people in with me more than twice a week in season. So typically we're going down in their volume and we're going down just in the number of times that they can come in per week, frankly. But we're honing in on those sport specific, more rate of force development driven movements in season versus off season, where I typically see them more. We'll do more compounds. We'll establish, a good foundational base of strength. But I'm also probably doing a little more, depending on their sport, plyometric training and, just not as fancy like sports specific exercises off season. And then we're narrowing down more into sports specific as they get into their off season. It does largely depend on the age of that athlete, their training age, how long they've been training, and just how motivated they come into the gym every single day.
Yeah. Do you see a difference? Like, do you see more of one type of athlete coming into the gym, meaning like say more runners or more soccer players versus gymnasts or divers? Do you get that, or do you see a
Yeah,
variety?
I see a variety, but so I'm in Maryland, and I don't know if you know much about Maryland. It's a huge lacrosse state.
Oh, yeah, of
Lacrosse is huge
course.
here.
Yeah,
So I get a lot of lacrosse athletes.
yeah.
Also, just being a swimmer, I feel like I have a huge pull towards swimmers, so they come in a lot. And I have a couple tennis players too. That's probably the three sports that I have the most of right now. And I would say 85% female athletes right now.
Nice. Caitlin, do you have anything before? Because I can keep going. But I want to give you a chance to jump in here.
No, I'll let you follow up with the next question, but I completely can feel the busyness increase of athletes. Now that I'm not in a sport anymore, but I really did feel like the end of high school, there's just more and more on teams that you're doing to stay healthy and stay up to date with athleticism. And I do feel like it's kind of a crazy increase over the last couple of years.
Well, and I wouldn't even say that it's all positive.
Yeah.
I think there's a big push for athletes just to fill their schedules
Mm.
and specialize really early, which I am not an advocate of whatsoever. I think it really helps an athlete, and there's plenty of studies that show that generalizing as you're young and then specializing only until you get into like the college level, honestly, there's a huge benefit to athletic performance. And the rate of burnout, if you specialize early, is so much higher than if you're exposed to multiple sports as a youth athlete. And then eventually you pick something that you really love, you're really passionate about when you're older. But I see so many athletes that, especially in lacrosse now, they have like a showcase event every weekend, and there's, this tournament and that tournament. Okay, we're going to add another clinic in because we need to work on our stick skills. And it just seems like there's always something, and they have no time for anything else, which I think leads to a lot of burnout, a lot of self-esteem issues, because if something doesn't go right, and if they're, in a plateau somewhere, they just, are comparing them to their friends, and, oh, so and so has made this team, this select team, and I'm not a part of it, and and then it leads to, it's like the ever, increasing cycle. It keeps going because they want to throw themselves back into more clinics and more showcases and, just keep adding things on their plate.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I think you're exactly spot on there. I've asked this question, the early specialization. I'm with you, and I wonder if it's because you and I both have exercise science as our background, and we understand the value of working muscles in different ways and ligaments and tendons and moving in different directions, and all of the things is beneficial from a physical perspective. But the part that I don't think they do enough research on, but there is some research out there, it also does support a better mental health. You basically, you're getting a break. You're trying something new, and you're challenged in a different way. And I think that is super important. And I agree with you. And you're talking about the over specialization, and then it turns into, you're right, I have to do this clinic, and if I don't do this clinic, I'm not going to keep up, and then I'm not going to make that team. And it does turn into a vicious cycle. And then you put layer on top of that what's going on social media, which we've just pointed out can be a super great resource. It's how you and I met. But unfortunately for athletes and high school athletes, it can sometimes be a really toxic environment. And I know that's something you've talked about, is even girls being trolled on social media, and then just being able to, that self-comparison. Do you talk about that with your athletes, or what's your relationship with that as far as coaching goes? Do you help athletes kind of navigate through that?
Social media, you're saying?
Yeah, or even the self comparison.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it has a time and a place, and it's very situationally based. But my approach to sports performance, and really why I love it so much, is that I think that sports performance is holistic. And so it's not just, let's get you into the weight room and let's lift with you. It's, how are you doing mentally? It's, how are you doing fueling yourself? How are you feeling with your sport? Like, are you motivated every single day? Do you even like it? I think those questions need to be asked. And then if there's some aspect that isn't so great, maybe we'll dive into that a little bit deeper. Obviously, I want to stay in my scope of practice, and I don't want to,
Sure.
if someone's really dealing with something major, I'm not gonna address that. I'll refer them to a professional. But I think a huge part of my job is to be there for the athlete in any way that they need me to be, really.
Yeah, I agree. And it's interesting as a trainer or a sports performance coach, it's amazing how much clients open up to you during that hour. And that's something that I've joked I've been in this industry for about 40 years, and I would joke like, who needs a psychiatrist when you have, a sports performance coach or a personal trainer?
Yeah.
Because, and I think we were on last week with a therapist who does walk, talk, or run, talk therapy. And I was kind of thinking to myself, well, it's not really any different than doing strength training. It is, they do share and they do talk, and you can work through problems as you are working through the workout. And I do think I'm with you. I believe that there's a holistic approach and that I also stay within my scope of practice. But when I see something that's coming up, I do try to go out and see, okay, is there a certification course out there that I can take? Or is there additional information? Because I do want to be armed. So when those conversations or those things come up, I can have an idea of what's going on. But same as you, I've built a library of people who I can say, hey, listen, I think it's time. Maybe you need to go see a registered dietitianist or a registered dietitian, or maybe it's time to see a mental performance coach or a therapist. And is that kind of what you do as you're talking with girls?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you establish the space that and once they're going through hard things with you in that hour long session, however long your session is, they're going through a tough workout. And so there's things that maybe I give them that they're not so sure about. And then they do them, and there's this huge sense of accomplishment. And so I think they go through those workouts with you, and you're the one who's kind of coaching them along and saying, hey, you can do this. I know you can. I wouldn't give anything to you if I didn't think you could do it. And so then they start to trust you with more than just their training. Maybe they'll come to you with a problem, or they're really struggling on the nutrition side. And that's actually one thing that is a huge red flag for me, if they're opening up to me about food. And I think that's something that I can really relate to and help that athlete out a lot with it. And that just, has such an impact on what I can do for them in the gym. If they're not fueling properly, I wouldn't say you're wasting the whole workout, but there's a huge portion that you're just not getting if you don't have enough fuel. So that's a big thing for me.
Yeah, to fuel performance and to fuel recovery. Right.
Yep.
Yeah. It's so important. And obviously, one of the issues that girls face in sport that is different than boys is, you talked a little bit about it, the stigma of women lifting and, quote unquote, not wanting to be bulky, but also a lot of the sports that are out there, there is a certain quote unquote look to that sport. We really face that in my sport and distance running. We've interviewed plenty of Division I swimmers. It is definitely an issue in Division I swimming. It's an issue in tennis. There's a lot of female sports where some of it is because of the uniforms, like the uniform in swimming. There's not a lot there. There's not a lot there, but so some of it is the uniform, but some of it is that we have just been conditioned to think that this is the body type that is going to perform optimally in that sport.
Yeah.
What are some of your thoughts and feelings around that?
Yeah. I mean, you take a bunch of high level athletes in general, and they're typically really motivated individuals. And so once they set their mind to something, a certain goal or an idea that they have, they're going to work really hard to do it. And so I think it's really dangerous when you get a bunch of, let's just say gymnasts, because of the high percentage of eating disorders and body image issues in that sport. You get a lot of those athletes together, and they're just more prone to developing those kinds of thoughts and feelings. And then obviously they're really motivated individuals. They want to look a certain way, they're going to do it. And so I think that's a huge reason for a little bit of the psychology behind an eating disorder or body image issues and disordered eating. But I think as performance coaches, you need to be really, really hyper vigilant when you're dealing with some of those athletes. And I think that only recently, and maybe not even still, a lot of performance coaches, strength coaches cared or saw those issues in athletes, especially at the college level. I feel like for a long time, it has only been males in that industry who just had, who were just like addicted to lifting and, kind of like the meathead stereotype in college strength, but who just have they can't even comprehend that issue in female athletes. And so it just doesn't get fixed. It doesn't get noticed, So that's one thing that I would love to see change.
Yeah, I agree. And since we're talking about this and, we just had National Coaches Day, and we've got International Day of the Girl coming up tomorrow. This podcast will release after that. But the idea of having more visibility for females in position of authority, or authority or power, weird words, but so they are the head strength and conditioning coach, or they are the head coach, or they are the AD, or they are in the positions where other female athletes are looking up to them. You yourself said you didn't have a lot of exposure to female leadership when you were coming up in the ranks. Like, what is something that you think as an industry that we can be doing better? So the strength industry, what are some things as far as sports performance coaches or personal trainers do you think that we can be doing to promote more female trainers?
Yeah, that's a great question. Honestly, I've had a pretty good experience about other coaches understanding and understanding the lack of women in the industry and the need for it. But obviously there is still a lack of women in the industry. And there are, unfortunately, coaches who I wouldn't say don't treat each other the same way, but there's a little bit of a stigma behind women in strength. And we typically can't lift as much as men, and we're not as fast as men for biological reasons, And so I have been in a handful of situations where, okay, we're doing like a team workout or something, or, whatever situation where it's like maybe a competition or just working out together, having a good time. And it becomes like the male show of who can lift more, who can jump higher, who can run faster. And it just becomes this meathead meeting,
Yeah.
So I think understanding, I love how you said you work a lot on functional strength with your athletes earlier. I think that's so important, because if you gave a lot of these men some of the functional strength things that you're doing, they can't do it because they're so used to bilateral squatting or deadlifting, and they don't work on the other holistic aspects of your sport. So sports performance is so much more than just how much you can lift, how high you can jump, how fast you can run, anything like that. I think we need to start recognizing as coaches how just different aspects of athleticism a little more, and different aspects of the athlete instead of just output. Obviously, we want output. Output's great. We want to keep moving that needle and keep getting athletes better, but it's more than just like 3 categories.
Yeah, I would agree with that. So we are going to get cooled down here in a minute, but before we do, what are 4 at-home exercises you think that every female athlete should's not a great word either, but that would be good for a female athlete to do, that they can do at home?
That's a good one. I'm going to go single leg RDL, a split squat isometric hold, anywhere from like 30 to 45 seconds.
Okay.
I love dead bugs, so I'm going dead bugs.
Me too, my fave.
And then eccentric push-ups, so slow negatives on the way down. And then if you can't do a full push-up on the way up, that's totally fine. Just roll up, try it again, try to get as slow as you can on the way down. I think those are great for all female athletes pretty much across the board.
Love that. And we started doing, those would be my 4. We started doing eccentric calf raises too, because I coach coach runners. So that's been something that, and it's so much harder for them. And just even getting them used to some of those words like unilateral, bilateral, eccentric, like, I mean, like just getting them used to the verbiage, I think is super helpful. I mean, it makes them more weight room, like ready. I mean, I think just making sure that we're not talking down to our athletes too and giving them, I love that you said, yeah, do an eccentric push up. And if it's harder for you to come up, get up, but like, as opposed to calling it, because what do people normally call it? They call it a girl push up.
Oh yeah,
It's
I
like,
hate that.
what are we doing?
Anytime I hear anyone say that, yeah.
Yeah, you and me both. Caitlin, do you have anything here before we get cooled down?
No, I was just saying how awesome. I agree with everything, especially as someone who I never really understood the weight room and being able to build strength to perform better just because it wasn't explained to me as much as I would have liked it to be. I can't emphasize how important your work is, and what you're doing is really awesome.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, and you've got so Maddie has a great Instagram follow, by the way. So if people want to just be like super inspired and motivated, I think it's one of the best feeds out there. So I would suggest going ahead and giving her a follow and make sure we put that in the show notes so everybody can go ahead and contact her. And I want to ask you, where'd you go to college?
Brigham Young University out in Utah.
Good for you. I love that. So you're in the mountains and then made your way back to Maryland?
I did. Yep.
Nice.
Yep, love the DC area.
I love that. That's so awesome. I love that. It's such and I follow BYU a little closer now because their distance running programs are pretty.
Yeah, they have a great program.
They're not too shabby.
Program. Yeah. Else it's so shabby. We'll do that to you, right?
So our cool down question is, if you were having a dinner party, who are 5 people you'd like to be sitting around the table?
Does it matter if they're living or not?
Doesn't. We love that.
Okay.
I love that.
Okay.
Anyone you want.
I'm going to go Billie Jean King.
Ooh, love that.
Oh man, this is so hard. I'm going to go Paige Beckers. I feel like I don't know, she'd be fun.
I think she would too.
I love Carlos Alcaraz, tennis.
Love.
And then I feel like I have to have a swimmer in there. I don't know.
Could be a former teammate.
Athletes though too. Interesting. Let's go with Michelle Obama.
Oh, I want to come now.
Oh gosh. There's so many people, honestly.
I know.
I need one more. Let's go Simone Biles.
Oh my gosh, I love it. I totally want to come though. Is there anything in particular you would make, or are you ordering takeout?
Oh gosh, probably ordering takeout. Too much pressure to cook.
That's exactly what I would do. Order takeout and have someone clean my house for the first time.
Exactly.
I clean my house, but I've never had anyone clean it. And I'd also have someone come clean my house just to take all of the pressure off.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Maddie, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for letting me stalk you for a year until we could find a time that worked in both of our schedules. It was a pleasure. And I so much agree with you. There are not enough women in strength and conditioning or sports performance or personal trainers. I've been doing this a long time, and that's one of the reasons I really wanted to have you on, is I want to shine a light on women out there doing amazing work in the gym, and you are absolutely one of them. So I am a huge, huge, huge cheerleader, and I'm looking forward to seeing all the incredible things you do with your career. Thanks everybody else for tuning in. We are so glad that you are here. Please remember, the simplest thing you can do for us is give us a follow, and on any platform you listen to us on, make sure you're giving us a 5-star review and sharing with a female athlete or coach you love. Until next time.